My name is Cassandra Reynolds, 35 years old, and I always thought I was a good daughter. I spent my whole life trying to please my mother, Evelyn, planning the perfect birthday dinner at her favorite restaurant in Boston. When she raised her crystal glass for a toast, I expected gratitude. Instead, she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "The best gift? You, leaving my life." What she did not know was how completely I would take her words to heart. Before I tell you how I disappeared from my mother's life, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And subscribe if you've ever had to cut ties with toxic family. I guess to understand why those words shattered me that night, you need to know our history. My childhood memories are filled with my mother's disapproving glances and cutting remarks. Nothing I did was ever good enough. My artwork was messy, my grades were never perfect enough, and my clothes were never stylish enough. While other mothers hung crayon drawings on refrigerators with pride, mine would point out every flaw before tossing them in the trash. "Stand up straight, Cassandra. No one likes a girl with bad posture," she would say in public. "Yankee my shoulders back so hard it left red marks. Smile more, but not like that, you look ridiculous." These constant corrections became the soundtrack of my childhood. My father was different. Dad was warm, encouraging, and quick to praise my efforts. "That's my bright girl," he would say, his eyes crinkling at the corners when I showed him my science fair project or a story I had written. He was the buffer between Mom's cold criticism and my fragile self-esteem. But when I was 12, everything changed. Dad died suddenly of a heart attack. I found him collapsed in our backyard while Mom was at her weekly bridge club. I still remember screaming for help, the neighbor rushing over to perform CPR, the ambulance lights flashing against our house, and I remember my mother's first words to me at the hospital. "Why weren't you watching him more carefully? You knew his heart was weak." Those words planted themselves deep in my psyche. Somehow in my mother's narrative, I became partially responsible for my father's death. It was the beginning of a guilt she would cultivate in me for decades. My teenage years became an endless quest for approval that never came. I joined every club, maintained a 4.0 GPA, became captain of the debate team, and editor of the school newspaper. Each achievement was met with, "Jennifer's daughter got accepted to Harvard," or "Lisa's daughter has much better stage presence in her recitals." Despite my mother's discouragement, I earned a full scholarship to Northwestern University. "You will probably drop out after a semester," she said when I showed her the acceptance letter. "College is harder than you think." But I did not drop out. I graduated summa cum laude with a double major in finance and economics. Mom did not attend my graduation, claiming she had a migraine. My relationships suffered the most from her interference. At 22, I dated Michael, a kind medical student whom my friends adored. When he came to dinner, Mom spent the evening subtly undermining me. "Cassandra was always so awkward with boys," she told him over dessert. "I am surprised she caught your attention." A week later, she called him privately to tell him about my emotional issues and how I needed more therapy before being ready for a serious relationship. He broke things off shortly after. This pattern repeated with Ryan at 25 and James at 28. Each time my mother found ways to sabotage whatever happiness I had found. "I am just looking out for you," she would say. "You have terrible judgment in men." Despite it all, I built a successful career as a financial advisor. By 35, I was handling portfolios for high-net-worth clients and had been promoted to senior advisor at my firm. I purchased a beautiful condo in Boston's Back Bay neighborhood and had created a stable life for myself. And still, I supported my mother. After Dad died, she never worked, living off his life insurance and later his pension. When those funds dwindled, I began supplementing her income. I paid her property taxes, covered her utilities, and funded her extravagant lifestyle. Every Sunday, I would drive to her house in Brookline, listen to her complain about her neighbors, her friends, and most often me. This year, for her 65th birthday, I planned something special. I reserved a private room at Fleming Statehouse, her favorite restaurant. I invited her closest friends, arranged for a professional photographer, ordered a custom cake from the bakery she had mentioned once in passing. For months, I had been working with a jeweler to restore my grandmother's sapphire bracelet, a family heirloom. My mother had always coveted, but my grandmother had left to me. I decided it was time to give it to her, hoping this generous gesture would finally earn her approval. This birthday will be different. I told my therapist the week before. I think she will finally see how much I care. My therapist gave me a concerned look but said nothing. Deep down, I knew I was setting myself up for disappointment, but hope is a stubborn thing. The evening of my mother's birthday, everything at Fleming's was perfect. The private dining room gleamed with candlelight reflecting off crystal and fine china. Centerpieces of white roses and hydrangeas, her favorite flowers, adorned the tables. The chef had prepared her favorite appetizers, and the bartender had stocked extra bottles of the Cabernet she preferred. I arrived an hour early to ensure everything was perfect. My heart raced with anticipation and anxiety as I straightened the place cards and adjusted the lighting. The restaurant manager assured me everything would be flawless. "Your mother must be very special," he said, smiling. "She is," I replied automatically, though my stomach tightened with unspoken complications. At 7 o'clock, sharp guests began arriving. My mother's friends greeted me warmly, many commenting on how wonderful it was that I had arranged such a lovely evening. "Your mother is so lucky to have you," said Eleanor, her oldest friend. I smiled politely, though inside I wondered if my mother shared that sentiment. At 7:15, my mother arrived. She wore an expensive black dress I had purchased for her last Christmas. Her silver hair perfectly styled. I moved to greet her with a hug, but she offered her cheek for a kiss instead. "The valet took forever," were her first words to me, "and this room is too dark. How will anyone see properly?" "I can ask them to adjust the lighting," I offered, quickly. She sighed, "Never mind, it is fine." "Who selected these flowers? Hydrangeas make me sneeze." They had been her favorites for as long as I could remember. I had watched her plant them in our garden every spring throughout my childhood. But I said nothing, just signaled the waiter to bring her a glass of wine. The dinner proceeded with my mother holding court among her friends. She barely acknowledged my presence, except to ask me to tell the waiter her steak was overcooked, though I could see it was perfectly medium rare, as she had requested. After the main course, before dessert was served, I stood to present her gift. The small blue velvet box sat heavy in my hands as I approached her chair. "Mom," I said, my voice stronger than I felt, "I wanted to give you something special for your 65th birthday." I handed her the box. This was grandmother's bracelet. I had it restored, and the clasp replaced with white gold. The table fell silent as she opened the box. The sapphires caught the light twinkling against the white gold settings. It was truly beautiful, and I had spent thousands having it professionally restored by one of Boston's top jewelers. My mother looked at it for a long moment, then closed the box with a snap. "Your grandmother should have left this to me in the first place," she said flatly. "She always did favor you inappropriately." The table grew uncomfortably quiet. Eleanor, sitting beside my mother, touched her arm gently. "Evelyn, it is a beautiful gift." My mother placed the box on the table without another word. My cheeks burned with humiliation as I returned to my seat. When the cake arrived, glowing with candles, everyone sang happy birthday. My mother smiled for the photographer, then stood to make a toast. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she said, her voice carrying across the now silent room. It is nice to be surrounded by true friends on my birthday. She did not look at me. As I get older, I find myself valuing authenticity more and more. She raised her glass higher and finally turned her gaze to me. What happened next plays in slow motion in my memory. If I were to wish for a gift this year, she continued, her eyes cold, the best gift would be for certain people to just leave my life entirely. No more pretense, no more obligation, just freedom from relationships that were never meant to be. The room went completely still. Her friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some looking down at plates, others exchanging glances. There was no mistaking her meaning. To another year, she finished, taking a sip of her wine, as if she had not just publicly rejected her only child. I sat frozen, unable to move or speak. The cake sat untouched before us as the photographer, sensing the tension, quietly packed up his equipment and left. For the remainder of the evening, my mother chatted with her friends as if nothing had happened. I moved through the motions of hosting my body on autopilot while my mind replayed her words over and over. The drive to take her home was silent. When we arrived at her house, she gathered her things, including the bracelet. The science of the science is not happened. 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 Next time, choose a better restaurant. Fleming's has gone downhill. I could not help myself. Did you mean what you said about wanting me out of your life? She paused, one foot on the curb. Cassandra, do not be so sensitive. I was making a general statement. It did not feel general, Mom. It felt very specific. She sighed heavily. If you choose to take everything personally, that is your problem. But yes, our relationship has always been a burden. I did my duty raising you. I am not obligated to pretend we have some special bond now. I pay your bills, I said quietly. I maintain your house. I take you to every doctor's appointment. And you never let me forget it, do you? She snapped. You think your financial support buys you the right to be in my life? That is your father in you, always keeping score. She slammed the car door and walked to her house without looking back. I sat in the driveway for nearly 20 minutes, tears streaming down my face before I could compose myself enough to drive home. That night, lying in bed, I realized a fundamental truth: nothing would ever change. No achievement, no gift, no sacrifice would ever be enough to make my mother love me. For 35 years, I had been running on a hamster wheel, exhausting myself for an impossible goal. As dawn broke, I made a decision that would change both our lives forever. I did not sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad making lists and plans until the sun rose by 6 a.m. I had a complete strategy for disappearing from my mother's life, not just emotionally, but practically and financially as well. First, I called my office and left a message for my boss explaining I needed to take 2 weeks of emergency personal leave. I had accumulated months of unused vacation time over the years, always too busy caring for my mother to use it. Next, I contacted James Wilson, a realtor I had helped purchase investment properties. I need to sell my condo quickly and discreetly, I told him when he called back. No public listings, no open houses. Find a private buyer willing to pay cash, even if it means taking slightly below market value. Are you in some kind of trouble, Cassandra? He asked, concerned. No trouble, I assured him, just making necessary changes. By noon, I had an appointment with my financial advisor, Gregory Peters. I arrived at his office with a detailed list of accounts and assets. I need to untangle my finances from my mother's, I explained. Every account, every automatic payment, every financial connection. Gregory reviewed my documents with a professional eye. This is extensive, he noted. You are currently paying for her property taxes, utilities, credit card minimums, car insurance, and medical copays. Yes, and I want it all stopped immediately. May I ask why? This is quite sudden. It is time for both of us to live independently, I said simply. We spent 3 hours restructuring my financial life. I froze the joint checking account where I deposited money for her expenses. I canceled the automatic payments set up from my accounts to her creditors. I removed myself as an authorized user on her credit cards, and her as the beneficiary on my life insurance policy and retirement accounts. What about the mortgage on her house? Gregory asked. You have been making those payments for 5 years. Stop those two, I said firmly. The house is in her name. The responsibility is hers. From there, I went to the post office to forward all my mail to a new P.O. box. I called every service provider we shared, from the home security company to the lawn care service, and removed my name and payment information. Using my knowledge as a financial advisor, I was meticulous. I left no loose ends, no forgotten automatic payments, no financial ties that could pull me back into orbit around her. Back at my condo, I packed only what I truly needed: clothes, important documents, irreplaceable photos, and a few sentimental items from my father. Everything else I decided could be sold with the condo or donated. As I packed, I realized how little I actually cared about my possessions. So many had been purchased to impress my mother or meet her expectations of what my life should look like. The expensive artwork I never particularly liked, the formal dining set I never used, the designer clothes that never felt comfortable, all could stay behind. That evening, I wrote my mother a letter. It took 7 drafts before I had something that expressed my feelings without anger or accusation. Mom, you said the best gift would be for me to leave your life. I am giving you that gift. By the time you read this, I will be gone. The financial support I have provided over the years has ended. The house bills and all expenses are now solely your responsibility. This is not done out of anger but acceptance. You are right that our relationship has been based on obligation rather than love. I release us both from that obligation. Do not try to find me. I do not wish to be found. Cassandra, I sealed the letter in an envelope and drove to her house late that night. I slipped it under her door and walked away without looking back. That night, I checked into a hotel under a different name, paying cash. As I sat on the generic hotel bed, I felt a surreal mix of emotions, from searing grief to profound relief. For the first time in my life, I was not responsible for my mother's happiness, comfort, or financial security. The weight that lifted from my shoulders was so immense, I actually gasped aloud in the empty room. Over the next week, my plan unfolded with mechanical precision. James found a cash buyer for my condo, accepting 15% below market value for a quick private sale. I opened new bank accounts at a different institution and transferred my assets. I deactivated my social media accounts and got a new phone number. I took only what fit in my car, driving west with no specific destination in mind. Each mile put physical distance between my old life and whatever would come next. I stopped checking my old email. I did not answer calls from unknown numbers. I severed every tether to my former existence. The first week of freedom was disorienting. Habit had me reaching for my phone to check on my mother to make sure she had taken her medication or to remind her of an upcoming appointment. I would catch myself planning Sunday visits that would never happen. At times, guilt would crash over me like a wave, leaving me breathless with doubt. But beneath the guilt and grief ran a current of something unfamiliar: possibility. For the first time, my decisions affected only me. My time was entirely my own. My resources, substantial after years of professional success, were mine to direct as I chose. I had disappeared from my mother's life completely. What I did not expect was how thoroughly I would disappear from my own former life as well. The Cassandra who had existed in Boston, the beautiful daughter constantly seeking approval, was gone too. Who would take her place remained to be seen. 1 week after I disappeared, my mother began trying to contact me. At first, her messages to my old email and voicemails to my disconnected number were irritated rather than concerned. Cassandra, the lawn service says you canceled their contract. Call me immediately. The electric company claims the automatic payment was stopped. Fix this today. My prescriptions need refilling. Where are you? She did not mention my letter. In her mind, I was still responsible for her life, regardless of what had happened or what I had clearly communicated. 10 days after I left my former assistant, Megan emailed my new address, which I had provided only to her and my therapist. Your mother came to the office today, she wrote. She was very upset, demanding to know where you were. Security had to escort her out when she started yelling, "Is everything okay?" I thanked Megan for letting me know, but provided no details. The same day, Eleanor called my therapist's office trying to get information about me. Bound by confidentiality, my therapist revealed nothing, but she did relay the message during our next phone session. "Your mother appears to be escalating, Dr. Winters," said carefully. "Eleanor said she has been calling everyone you know, becoming increasingly frantic. 2 weeks in, my mother discovered her house payment was overdue. This revelation, according to Eleanor's message to my therapist, sent her into a tailspin. She had not made a mortgage payment in 5 years and had apparently forgotten the process entirely. Social media became her next battleground. Though I had deactivated my accounts, friends forwarded screenshots of her posts, which grew more dramatic by the day. "My daughter has abandoned me without warning," she wrote. "After all I sacrificed for her, she has left her elderly mother without support or care. Please help me find her." The comments filled with sympathetic responses from people who knew only her version of events. A few who knew us both expressed skepticism but were quickly shouted down by her supporters. 3 weeks after my disappearance, my mother received notice that her joint account with me had been frozen. According to Eleanor, who continued updating my therapist, this was when reality truly began to set in. "She went to the bank and made quite a scene," Eleanor reported. "They explained the account was frozen and suggested she open a new one with her own funds. She said she had no funds, that Cassandra handled all that." My mother had never bothered to understand her own financial situation. Despite having a modest pension from my father's job and Social Security income, she had always relied on my supplemental support to maintain her lifestyle. Without it, she faced a harsh reality. A month into my absence, my mother received notice that her credit card payments were past due. All 6 of her cards had been maxed out and she had been making only minimum payments using my money. Now she faced over $40,000 in credit card debt with no way to pay it. When James Wilson placed a sold sign in front of my condo, my mother drove there. In a panic, only to find new owners moving in. They had no information about me to share. 5 weeks after I left, my mother missed her second mortgage payment and received her first formal warning from the bank. This, coupled with her mounting credit card debt, caused her first health crisis. Eleanor found her collapsed in her kitchen, hyperventilating from an anxiety attack. At the hospital, her blood pressure was dangerously high, and the doctor prescribed medication for anxiety and hypertension. "She kept asking for you, Eleanor," told my therapist. "It was the first time I saw her actually worried about you rather than what you could do for her." After 6 weeks, my mother left her first voicemail that wasn't demanding or accusing. Her voice sounded smaller, older. "Cassandra, I do not understand why you have done this. I need you to come home. I miss you." The last part sounded forced, unpracticed, as if expressing affection was a foreign language to her. 2 months after I left, my mother received foreclosure warnings. Her house, worth nearly $1 million in Brookline's expensive market, had substantial equity, but she had no idea how to access it or manage a sale. Eleanor, despite being 80 herself, helped my mother meet with a financial advisor who explained her situation in stark terms. Sell the house, pay off the debt, and find a more affordable living situation, or face bankruptcy and foreclosure. "Your mother finally broke down," Eleanor reported. "She admitted that she drove you away. She showed me the letter you left. It was the first time I have seen her take responsibility for anything in the 40 years I have known her." 3 months after my disappearance, my mother wrote me a letter. Eleanor forwarded it to my therapist, who asked if I wanted to read it. I hesitated, but eventually agreed. The letter was unlike anything I had ever received from my mother. Her usual perfect penmanship was shaky. The paper wrinkled as if it had been crumpled and smoothed out multiple times. "Cassandra, I have spent these months angry at you for abandoning me. Yesterday I found a photo album in the attic, pictures of you growing up that I had forgotten about. Looking at your face in those photos, I saw something I never allowed myself to see before, how much you were hurting even as a child because of me. I was not a good mother to you. I was jealous of your relationship with your father. After he died, I blamed you because blaming myself was too painful. I resented you for being young and having opportunities I never had. None of this is an excuse. I am not asking for money or help. The house is being sold next month. I am moving to a senior apartment that I can afford on my pension and Social Security. I understand why you left. I would have left too. I am sorry, Mom. The letter contained no demands, no guilt trips, no manipulation. For the first time in my life, my mother had seen me as a separate person with valid feelings. A week later, Eleanor sent another update. My mother had joined a support group for parents estranged from their adult children. She was seeing a therapist weekly. She was learning to do things for herself that she had always relied on others to handle. On her next birthday, exactly 1 year after the dinner that changed everything, Eleanor sent a final message Evelyn celebrated quietly at home. She had a small cake that she bought herself. She told me it was the first birthday where she truly understood what she had lost. Not the financial support or the practical help, but you, just you. While my mother was confronting her new reality, I was building mine. After 2 weeks of driving across the country, I settled in Seattle as far from Boston as I could get while staying in the continental United States. The constant rain and gray skies matched my mood those first few months, but the stunning beauty of the Pacific Northwest began to heal something in me. I found a modest apartment in Queen Anne with a view of Puget Sound. Unlike my Boston condo, I furnished this place entirely to my own taste. Simple, comfortable furniture in blues and greens that reminded me of the ocean. No formal dining room, no guest room, designed to impress visitors who never came. Just spaces that felt like home to me. Using my experience and credentials, I found a position at a boutique financial firm specializing in ethical investments. The company was smaller than my Boston firm, the clients less wealthy, but the culture emphasized work-life balance and genuine service rather than prestige and profit. We value advisors who care about their clients as people, not just portfolios, managing partner told me during my interview. I almost cried at the simple humanity of that statement. Finding a therapist was my next priority. Dr. Matthews specialized in childhood trauma and toxic family dynamics. Unlike my Boston therapist, who had gently encouraged reconciliation over the years, Dr. Matthews validated my decision to separate from my mother. The estrangement is sometimes the healthiest choice, she told me during our first session. Not every relationship can or should be saved. Those words gave me permission to stop feeling guilty about my choice, to stop second-guessing the decision that had allowed me to breathe freely for the first time in decades. Making friends proved more challenging than finding work or housing. In Boston, most of my social connections had been through my mother or workplace. In Seattle, I had to learn to form relationships based solely on common interests and genuine connection. I joined a hiking group, a book club, and a community garden. Slowly, I built a circle of friends who knew nothing about my past, who liked me for who I was rather than what I could provide. These relationships, uncomplicated by history or obligation, showed me what healthy connections felt like. The first holiday season alone was difficult. Thanksgiving came with a wave of grief so intense I spent the day in bed, looking at old photos of my father and crying for the family I never really had. Christmas brought anxiety dreams where I was frantically shopping for my mother, only to realize I had forgotten what she liked. But New Year's Eve marked a turning point. My new friend Stephanie invited me to a small gathering at her house. There I met Daniel, a high school English teacher with kind eyes and a quiet sense of humor. We talked for hours about books, hiking trails, and our favorite spots in Seattle. When he asked for my number, I hesitated, old fears surfacing about letting someone close. But I gave it to him anyway, a small act of courage that felt enormous. Our first few dates were nothing like my Boston relationships. There was no pressure to impress, no calculation about what my mother would think of him. We simply enjoyed each other's presence, two adults choosing to spend time together. Meeting Daniel's family was an education in what healthy family dynamics looked like. His parents disagreed without contempt, expressed affection without strings, and showed interest in his life without trying to control it. The first time his mother hugged me goodbye, I stood stiff with surprise before awkwardly returning the embrace. "Your family is so normal," I told Daniel afterward. "It is kind of amazing," he laughed. "They have their quirks, but yes, they are pretty great." 6 months into my new life, I had my first major breakthrough in therapy. Dr. Matthews had asked me to write a letter to my younger self, the child who tried so hard to earn her mother's love. Dear little Cassandra, I wrote, it was never your job to make Mom happy. Her unhappiness lived inside her long before you were born. You did not cause it, and you could never fix it. You were a good daughter. You were worthy of love, exactly as you were. Reading those words aloud in Dr. Matthews' office, I sobbed until my throat hurt. For the first time, I truly believed them. That same week, I received the letter from my mother forwarded through my therapist. Reading her words, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Validation that my experience had been real, sorrow for the relationship we never had, and a strange, tentative hope that perhaps she was capable of change. I did not respond immediately. Instead, I brought the letter to Dr. Matthews and spent several sessions processing what it meant and how, if at all, I wanted to respond. There is no rush, Doctor, Matthews assured me. Take all the time you need to decide what is best for you. The 7-month mark of my new life brought another milestone. I was promoted at work, after bringing in several significant new clients. My approach to financial advising focused on understanding clients' values, goals rather than just maximizing returns, had proven successful. You have a gift for making people feel heard, my boss told me. It was perhaps the first professional compliment I had received that had nothing to do with numbers or performance metrics. Dating Daniel continued to teach me about healthy relationships. When we disagreed, there was no silent treatment, no threats of abandonment, no keeping score of who was wrong. We simply talked it through, sometimes awkwardly, until we found understanding. When he told me he loved me for the first time, I panicked and pulled away for nearly a week. He gave me space, but made it clear he was still there. When I finally explained my fears, he listened without judgment. Love should not be scary, he said simply. It should feel like coming home. As the 1-year mark of my departure from Boston approached, I received another update from Eleanor through my therapist. My mother had sold her house, paid off her debts, and moved to a senior living apartment. She was taking art classes and had joined a book club. The photo Eleanor attached showed my mother looking older but somehow softer, smiling tentatively at the camera while holding a watercolor she had painted. Looking at that photo, I made a decision I never thought I would make. I would return to Boston not to stay, not to rescue, but to see for myself who my mother had become in my absence. After a year of building my new life in Seattle, I flew back to Boston with a mixture of dread and curiosity. Daniel offered to come with me, but this was a journey I needed to take alone. I did not tell my mother I was coming. I was not ready for a planned reunion with its weight of expectations and potential disappointments. Instead, I booked a hotel downtown and spent the first day reaccording myself with the city that had been my home for most of my life. Boston felt simultaneously familiar and foreign, like a dream remembered upon waking. I walked through the public garden past my old office building and by my former condo. These places that had once defined my daily existence now seemed to belong to someone else's life. On my second day, I visited Eleanor, the only person besides my therapist who knew I was in town. At 81, she remained sharp and insightful. Your mother has changed, she told me, over tea in her Beacon Hill apartment. Not completely, mind you, she still has her moments, but there is a humility to her now that I never thought I would see. Do you think I should see her? I asked. Eleanor considered carefully before answering. Only you can decide that, dear, but I will say this. The woman who told you to leave her life is not entirely the same woman who lives in that senior apartment now. I had not planned to see my mother that day, but as I left Eleanor's building, I found myself driving toward Brookline automatically. My mother's new address was a modest apartment complex for seniors, nothing like the stately colonial home she had lived in for decades. I parked across the street, intending just to see the building and leave. But as I sat in my rental car, I saw her walking toward the entrance, carrying a small grocery bag. She moved more slowly than I remembered, her posture less rigid. Without conscious decision, I got out of the car. We nearly collided at the coffee shop next door to her building. I had decided to get a coffee to calm my nerves before leaving, and there she was, in line ahead of me. She did not recognize me at first. My appearance had changed her shorter style, more casual expression, more relaxed. It was only when the barista called out Cassandra for my order that she turned, her eyes widening in shock. Cassandra, her voice was barely a whisper. "Hello, Mom." We stood frozen, the bustle of the coffee shop continuing around us. Finally, she spoke again. Are you okay?" The question surprised me. In all our years together, she had rarely asked about my well-being with genuine concern. I said simply, "Are you?" She nodded her eyes, never leaving my face. Would you sit with me? Just for a few minutes?" I hesitated, then gestured to a small table by the window. We sat awkwardly, two strangers who had once been mother and daughter. "I did not know you were in Boston," she said finally. "I did not tell anyone except Eleanor." She nodded again, understanding. "You look well. Different, but well." "So do you," I replied, and meant it. There was a softness to her that had not existed before. The harsh lines of perpetual disapproval somewhat faded. After a few minutes of strange small talk about the weather and the coffee shop, I suggested we walk to the park across the street, a public place neutral ground but more private than the bustling cafe. We sat on a bench, leaving careful space between us. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then my mother did something I had never seen her do. She cried, not the manipulative tears she had sometimes used to get her way, but silent, dignified tears that she tried to wipe away discreetly. "I am sorry," she said, her voice steady despite the tears. "I never thought I would see you again." "I never planned to come back," I admitted. She nodded. "I understand why I have had a lot of time to think about everything. Eleanor mentioned you joined a support group." "Yes, parents estranged from adult children. Peacock, they call it." She gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. "At first I went to learn how to get you back, but what I learned instead was why you left." She turned slightly to face me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The other parents there, they all had stories about their ungrateful children, who abandoned them for no reason. But as they talked, I began to see the pattern, the control, the criticism, the emotional manipulation. I recognized myself in. "I treated you the way my mother treated me." This was new information. My grandmother, who had died when I was 10, had always seemed like a saint in family stories. "Your grandmother," my mother nodded. "She was cruel. Nothing I did was ever good enough, speaking me constantly to my cousins, to neighbors' children. She told me I was the disappointment of her life." Her voice caught. "Sound familiar?" I felt a chill despite the warm spring day. "You never told me. I never told anyone. I was ashamed somehow, as if her treatment of me was my fault." She looked down at her hands. "When you were born, I swore I would be different. But I did not know how. I had no model for good mothering, only perfect images from magazines and television that I could never live up to. That explains some things," I said carefully, "but it does not excuse them." "No," she agreed immediately. "It does not. Nothing excuses how I treated you, especially after your father died. I was jealous of your relationship with him. He knew how to love you in a way I did not know how to love anyone." The frankness of this admission stunned me. My mother had never acknowledged my father's superior parenting, let alone admitted jealousy of our bond. "After he died, I blamed you because I could not bear to blame myself for not being there when he needed me. And then over the years it became a habit, making you responsible for my happiness, my comfort, my everything." She wiped away another tear. "It was wrong, Cassandra. All of it was wrong." We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of decades of pain between us. "I brought something for you," she said finally, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a worn leather journal. "I have been writing this since you left. My therapist suggested it might help me understand my behavior and its impact on you." She held it out to me. "You do not have to read it, But if you ever want to understand, it is all there. My childhood, my marriage to your father, my failures as your mother, and my work to become someone different. I took the journal, feeling its weight in my hands. Thank you, I said, not knowing if I would ever open it. I am not asking for forgiveness, she continued. I am not even asking to be part of your life again. I just wanted you to know that I understand now why you had to leave and that I am truly sorry for making that necessary. As we parted that day, there was no tearful reconciliation, no promises of a restored relationship. Instead, there was something more valuable: truth. For the first time, we had spoken honestly about our shared past and the damage done. I live in Seattle now, I told her as we stood to leave. I have a good life there. She smiled a genuine smile without bitterness. I am glad. That is what I should have wanted for you all along. I cannot promise anything, I said carefully. But if you would like, we could exchange emails, just see how it goes. I would like that very much, she replied, her voice steady but her eyes bright with unshed tears. We agreed to a limited correspondence, emails only for 3 months. No phone calls, no visits, just written words that could be considered carefully before being sent or read. As I watched her walk back to her apartment building, shoulders straight but without the rigid control, I remembered I felt something unexpected: hope. Not for the mother-daughter relationship I had always craved as a child, but for a new, more honest connection between two flawed adults who shared a painful history but might possibly find a way forward. On the plane back to Seattle, I held the journal but did not open it. Some truths needed to be approached slowly, with care and support. I would share it with Dr. Matthews first, then decide if and when I was ready to read my mother's unfiltered thoughts. Daniel met me at the airport, his calm presence a ball after the emotional turbulence of the trip. How did it go? He asked simply as we drove home. Honestly, I replied, nothing like I expected, and maybe, just maybe, better than I feared. 2 years have passed since I vanished from my mother's life. In that time, I have built something I never thought possible. A life defined by peace, rather than constant anxiety, by genuine connection, rather than obligation, by self-worth, rather than desperate approval-seeking. My career in Seattle has flourished. I was made partner at the firm last year, specializing in helping women achieve financial independence after divorce or widowhood. The work feels meaningful in a way my Boston position never did. Perhaps because I understand firsthand the power of financial security in creating freedom. Daniel proposed 6 months ago on a hiking trail overlooking the Olympic Mountains. Unlike my previous relationships, our connection has grown slowly and steadily, built on mutual respect and genuine affection, rather than desperation or convenience. When I said yes, it was with complete confidence, rather than the nagging doubt that had accompanied major decisions in my past life. My relationship with my mother has evolved into something I never imagined possible. Our email correspondence gradually expanded to include occasional phone calls. Last Christmas, I invited her to visit Seattle, and to my surprise, she came. Watching her interact with Daniel and his family was revelatory. She was quieter, more observant, less quick to judge or criticize. When Daniel's niece showed her a drawing, my mother admired it sincerely, without pointing out flaws or making comparisons. It was as if she was learning how to be a grandmother by watching Daniel's parents with their grandchildren. Your mother is not what I expected from your stories, Daniel said after she returned to Boston. She is not the same person, I replied, realizing the truth of it as I spoke. Neither am I. We are planning a small wedding for next spring. When I hesitantly asked if she would like to attend, my mother's response surprised me. I would be honored, she wrote, but I will understand if you change your mind. This day should be perfect for you, not stressful because of my presence. This consideration of my feelings, this willingness to step back if needed, was evidence of how far she had come. 2 years ago, she would have either demanded a central role or refused to attend out of spite. My mother continues her therapy and support group. She volunteers at a community garden and teaches art classes at her senior living facility. We will never have the close mother-daughter bond that some of my friends enjoy with their mothers. Too much damage was done too early, and some wounds, while healed, leave permanent scars. But we have something different, something hard-won through separation, self-reflection, and deliberate change. We have an honest relationship between two adults who see each other clearly, with all our flaws and strengths. The journal she gave me sits on my bookshelf. I finally read it with Dr. Matthew's support 6 months after my Boston visit. Its pages contained pain. I had never imagined insights. I had never expected a perspective on our shared history that helped me understand, if not excuse, the dynamics that shaped our relationship. Looking back on my decision to disappear from my mother's life, I see now that it was necessary not just for my healing but for hers as well. As long as I remained the dutiful daughter, absorbing her criticism and meeting her needs, neither of us could change. It was only in my absence that she was forced to confront her behavior and its consequences. Not everyone who reads this will understand my choice. Some will think me cruel for leaving an elderly parent without support. Others might question why I ever allowed contact to resume. But I have learned that healing rarely follows a straight or simple path. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for ourselves and others is to disappear until we are seen for our true worth. Sometimes the people who hurt us most deeply can change, given enough time and motivation. And sometimes the family we create through choice can teach us how to heal the wounds inflicted by the family we were born into. Daniel and I are building a life based on mutual respect, open communication, and genuine affection. His family has welcomed me with a warmth I never knew was possible. My circle of friends continues to grow, each relationship teaching me something new about healthy connection. As for my mother and me, we proceed carefully each interaction, a small test of our new boundaries and understanding. There are still difficult moments, old patterns that try to reassert themselves. But now we have tools to recognize and redirect these tendencies before they cause new damage. At our most recent birthday dinner, a quiet affair at a restaurant near her apartment, she raised her glass in a toast, very different from the one that changed our lives 2 years ago. "To second chances," she said simply, "and to the daughter who was brave enough to leave so that both of us could find better versions of ourselves." Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself and others is the courage to vanish until they see your true worth. Have you ever had to create distance from someone you love in order to heal? Document below and let me know. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for being part of this journey with me, and remember, it is never too late to create boundaries that protect your peace.